Now, this is something that I've certainly not done in the past, so I'm gonna go big. You guys know me. If I go big. So, guys, I had the opportunity to sit down with Vice President Joe Biden and Senator Kamala Harris to talk about a number of important issues that we're facing as a country. I do feel that Vice President Biden and Senator Harris are the best choice to lead our country, and I am endorsing them to become President and Vice President of our United States.
Hey guys, I got to tell you, well, it is so good seeing you guys. Senator Harris, it's a pleasure to finally see you and finally meet you. And I have never publicly endorsed a presidential candidate or a vice presidential candidate in my life, over my career. So I figured let's kick this conversation off this way by me officially publicly endorsing you both to become president and vice president of our great country.
That's fantastic.
Thank you.
Of course, the first congratulations goes out to our new president-elect, Joe Biden. Congratulations on the presidency and congratulations on being the most voted for presidential candidate in the history of our great country.
The endorsement that I made years ago with Biden was one I thought was the best decision for me at that time. And I thought back then, when we talk about, hey, I'm in this position where I have some influence, and it's my job then. I felt like that then. It's my job now to exercise my influence and share with this is who I'm going to endorse. Am I going to do that again this year? That answer is no.
So last year we had Tom Brady at the Vault Conference. This year we have this guy. Check this out.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson here. Man, I am pumped. I got some big news to share with you guys. I cannot wait to join all of you guys down there at the Vault Conference in Palm Beach, September 4th through the 7th. I'm going to be sitting down with your host and my good buddy, Patrick Bet-David. We're going to chop it all up from leadership, entrepreneurial spirit, back to work for me because the rent is always due.
In today's easy cancel culture world, and cancel culture, woke culture, this culture, that culture, division, etc., that really bugs me.
What is it about bald middle-aged men who are very wealthy and are into fitness culture, that when they hit about 50, they suddenly start talking about wokeness and cancel culture? There must be like a term for this. Let's call it like Joe Roganification or something like that. Because, yeah, The Rock appears to be going on a somewhat similar trajectory to someone like Joe Rogan, who's his buddy anyway, in that someone who has supported openly Democratic politicians like Joe Biden is now complaining about wokeness. Now, for a long time, it's been speculated Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson will one day run for president, and if he will run for president one day, he will run for the Republican nomination. Now, we're going to get into his politics today because I probably think he's conservative generally, but I guess you can't really boil him down to like a political party in America because he definitely isn't someone who fits in with the mold of a traditional Republican or even a traditional Trumpist Republican. In fact, for a guy who complains about wokeness, I mean, just look at some of the stuff he said over the past 4 years or whatever. I'm sure plenty of conservatives would call him woke for talking about things like Black Lives Matter and everything. So what I wanted to do today is just talk about this guy, because I don't think his politics are really that complicated. It just boils down to he's just so full of himself. I don't want to use the term narcissist, because obviously we don't know if he is. But let's just say The Rock thinks about The Rock, and his politics are The Rock. Like, that is his politics. Whatever is best for his brand and image, but also based on the stuff he's kind of said recently, and collaborating more with right-wing people and talking more like right-wing talking points, it kind of just feels to me he's just like going in that direction because that's where the audience is for his fucking slop films and also a host of corporate products. And it's just insane to me how much stuff this guy is into. In terms of making yourself into a brand, he has to be one of the most successful people at this. Just becoming like this massive movie star. He's gone back to wrestling now as well. Has so many different products and everything. It's just like so insane how much stuff he's into. But yeah, today I just wanted to kind of talk about this trajectory. And this was inspired by seeing like a post where he is going to some sort of conference or like event days hosted by Patrick Bet-David, of course, a guy who hosts the Right Wing podcast himself. And I was just thinking about how has The Rock gone from endorsing Joe Biden to talking about wokeness on Fox News, talking about how he really regrets that, and then collaborating with someone like Patrick Bet-David. So all of that coming up for you today. Please follow me on social media at the Kavernacle on Instagram, my travel and personal. Also check me out on Threads and Blue Sky. And if you want to support my work, trying to build up as many $1 to $3 patrons as possible, check out the Patreon page. And that is also how you get access to the Discord server. So in terms of my own like personal views of The Rock, I mean, I'm not a fan because I'm not into wrestling. I don't think he's a great actor. I mean, he's fine as like an action star or whatever, but basically all of his movies are the same. Most of them look shit. So I'm not going to spend any time watching them. But yeah, you can't deny he's been a very successful actor. If we're looking at box office, we're looking at the popularity of the movies he's in. And also he's one of those few actors, or in the past he was, not so much anymore, who can literally just drive a movie to success based on the fact that he's in it. Like, think about all these like really terrible movies he's been in, but they're still financially successful purely because he's in them. So you can't deny this guy's success. And I went on his Instagram quick before this, and I'm just like astounded at all the stuff he's doing. So recently he launched skincare. And I'm thinking, what interest does this guy like have specifically in launching a skincare company? And then it talked about him going to WrestleMania again. He's in Moana 2. He has like an energy drink company as well. I've never seen this in the UK. And also he has a tequila company. And I'm pretty sure I'm probably just scratching the surface of all these things. They've all got huge followings on Instagram, you know, probably because he's affiliated with them. And of course, he stars in movies still. You know, there's a movie called Red Notice that he was in. Apparently, he was a nightmare to work with. And there's a new movie called Red Something. I don't even know what it is, with Chris Evans. Like, these look like the same movie. And then I didn't even know this. There is a TV show called Young Rock with 37 episodes about his life. I think because I'm in the UK, maybe I am ignorant to how massive this guy is, that he even like has all this stuff going for him. Or maybe I'm just ignorant of like social media marketing. But yeah, it's just so crazy to me how much he's involved in all this stuff. But also, because he's so involved in this stuff, even if he has the persona of such a nice guy, as we're going to get into, it feels very inauthentic. And this is really weird because I was talking to someone about this the other day. And do you know those guys in school, or do you know those guys anywhere? Those guys who are just like super, super nice. When you speak to them, they talk to you like they're your best friend or something, right? And they're like this with absolutely everyone. And I don't know about you. For me personally, I always hate people like this. And people might find that weird. How can you hate nice people? And I get it. But I'm a cynical guy. When someone is that nice to me, at the very least, I find it very inauthentic. And I'm just like, you're just doing this for appearances. With The Rock, he is doing this. But also at the same time, it's great for growing a brand if everyone thinks you're the nicest guy ever. And he does have a reputation generally for being a nice guy. As we're going to get into, though, recent reports have detailed, if you work with him on a movie, he's not so nice because he doesn't take his colleagues into consideration at all when he shows up to set like 8 hours late, which has led to conflict with multiple other actors because, yeah, if you don't respect the cast and the crew's time or anyone's time, you might just show up 6 hours late because you're like, well, I'm the star. I bring the money in. I'll do whatever the fuck I want. And it's also clear part of this is influenced by him being an absolute gym freak, which fair play to him. He still looks great at like 50 something. At the same time, it's clear he prioritizes this above everything, which leads him to be late to a lot of things. Now, in terms of politics, like I said, there's been speculation for a long time The Rock is going to be president one day. But I did find this interesting article, and it is like a bit of a different political climate now. This is 7 years ago, 2017, 7 years ago, which makes me feel so old, on GQ called Dwayne Johnson for President by Katie Weaver. And what's interesting about this article, I'm not going to mention this part, she basically spends a couple of days with The Rock, and the way she talks about him, I think, is so telling. Basically saying, like, the way he speaks to me is so personal, and it's like we've known each other for a long, long time. He's like so interested. He's just so friendly, so nice. And like I said, for me, a lot of red flags. And it's also someone who is very full of himself and so self-confident. He just believes he can achieve like absolutely everything. So I'm going to read you some of the political parts of this just to start it off, because it's the main thing that I found today where he actually, I wouldn't call it detailed policy, but he talks about politics a lot more here than I've seen anywhere else. So last June, when the Washington Post published an op-ed suggesting he could be a viable candidate, Johnson posted a screen grab and gave the idea a boost. On Instagram, he called the Post piece interesting and fun to read, adding that the most important thing right now is a strong, honest leadership from our current and future leaders of this country. Since then, Johnson tells me he's given the question more thought. A year ago, he says it started coming up more and more. There was a real sense of earnestness, which made me go home and think, let me really rethink my answer and make sure I am given an answer that is truthful and also respectful. He talks like this a lot. I've heard him say that line like about 4 times today. I didn't want to be flippant. We'll have 3 days off for a weekend, no taxes. So after all that consideration, Johnson doesn't hesitate when I ask him whether he honestly might one day give up his life as the highest paid movie star on earth in order to run for office. I think that's a real possibility, he says solemnly. And then in the article, he talks about like growing up like quite poor and stuff like that. Johnson's industrial strength patriotism is a big reason people wonder about his political aspirations. Last year, both presidential campaigns reached out for him for his endorsement. He says, which I did not give. I felt like, and give me a second because I've never said this publicly, I feel like I'm in a position now where my word carries a lot of weight and influence, which of course is why they want the endorsement. But I also have a tremendous amount of respect for the process and felt like if I did share my political views publicly, a few things would happen. And these are all conversations I have with myself in the gym at 4 a.m. I felt like it would either A, make people unhappy with the thought of whatever my political views was, and also it might sway an opinion, which I didn't want to do. He said he told both the Trump and Clinton campaigns that he wasn't making an endorsement and he preferred to see Americans make up their own minds. Just to stop it there quick, I do find that train of thought really, really funny of, I don't want to influence anyone. Coming from the king of like influencer marketing, The Rock, makes himself a complete brand and loves, in my opinion, the sound of his voice. He didn't want to influence anyone back in 2017. And of course, when you have someone like Trump, so many celebrities are coming out against him. It's not like a hard thing, but if you want to just be as marketable as possible, you kind of stay out of politics. Makes sense from a business point of view, but it's funny the way he frames it of like, yeah, I just don't want to influence anyone. I'm just like, come on. So how do you think Donald Trump is doing, I ask? This is, of course, when he was president. With any job, you come into it and you've got to prove yourself. And Johnson pauses, performing lightning fast mental calibrations. Personally, I feel that if I were president, poise would be important, leadership would be important, taking responsibility for everybody, even if I didn't agree with someone on something. I wouldn't shut them down, I would actually include them. The first thing we do is we'd come and sit down, we talk about it. It's hard to categorize right now. I think he's doing, other than to tell you how I would operate and what I would like to see. What would you like to see? Right, he says, laughing. I'd like to see better leadership. I'd like to see a greater leadership. When there's a disagreement and you have a large group of people that you're in disagreement with, for example, the media, I feel like it informs me that I could be better. We all have issues and we've got to work our shit out. And I feel like one of the qualities of great leadership is not shutting people out. I missed that part. Even if we disagree, we've got to figure it out. Because otherwise I feel, as an American, all I hear and all I see in the example you're setting is, now I'm shutting you out and you can't come. Disagreement informs us. The responsibility as president, I would take responsibility for everyone, especially when you disagree with me. If there's a large number of people disagreeing, there might be something I'm not seeing, so let me see, let me understand it. So anyone who says The Rock can't have a career in politics, just listen to that answer again. Literally absolute perfection of a politician's non-answer to a question. Like, what is he even saying there? He's saying, you got to lead as president, be a good leader, yep. You got to listen to all sides, yep. You got to understand why people disagree with you and not shut them out. That's really, really great reasons to consider why you would be a good president and why you'd be a better president than Donald Trump. I mean, he probably would be a better president than Donald Trump, but again, pretty much tells you everything about the guy. Like, considering the background he came from as well, which you could either really play into cynically, politically, or as he, you know, says a lot he cares about it, you could use that experience to talk about how that would inform you being a president, right? How your own experience growing up in a certain environment, like a poor environment in America, would inform how you would act as president. But instead he says this absolute garbage instead because, yeah, it's diplomatic. It doesn't piss off anyone. And that's just The Rock for you. Link the article in the comments so you guys can go read that. It's an interesting article anyway, if you read it like more critically and not the puff piece it's meant to be, because it's literally titled like Dwayne The Rock for president. But you will get a good insight into his personality. And it is larger than life. And in my opinion, it's quite unhinged as well. And it is a guy that comes across who's just so self-absorbed. But now this was in 2017. I feel like with him and a lot of other people, there's two big shifts. And for him to start with, it was Black Lives Matter. And then I think for a lot of people like him, it was also COVID. COVID in a bad way, but Black Lives Matter in a good way. Because when the protests were happening, he directly called out Donald Trump for his bad leadership. He talked about, you know, Black Lives Matter being important. In that, in the run-up to the 2020 election, it feels like it kind of shifted his politics a bit. Now, you know, I'm not someone who's going to say voting for Joe Biden makes you have good politics, but as someone who's always positioned themselves as a centrist, talks about voting for both parties. I don't know who he would have voted for Republican in the past, but talks about that. And then he actually did a massive endorsement of Joe Biden. And he did like a big video on his own. And he actually talked to both of them directly on video call about why he was endorsing them. So it's like a massive, massive deal for him to do this. And actually, it feels like to me, this is more of a political calculation. Like, I genuinely feel like this was motivated by his own desire to get into politics rather than just feeling very strongly about Joe Biden, because the amount of effort he put into this in terms of, it's like a 7-minute video or something. He really went out of his way to endorse Joe Biden. He didn't post something on Instagram. He didn't post a little video talking about, you know, maybe go vote for Joe Biden like the day before or something. No, this was months before.
Now, that said, I'm going to be pushing this political conversation just a little bit more. Now, you know, look, I've got friends in all parties, but the one thing that we can always agree on is the conversation and the dialogue, and where that conversation lands is always the most critical part. Now, this is something that I've certainly not done in the past, so I'm going to go big. You guys know me. If I go big. So, guys, I had the opportunity to sit down with Vice President Joe Biden and Senator Kamala Harris to talk about a number of important issues that we're facing as a country. I thought it was a great and extremely productive conversation that we had. And as a registered independent for years now with centrist ideologies, I do feel that Vice President Biden and Senator Harris are the best choice to lead our country, and I am endorsing them to become president and vice president of our United States.
Thank you so much. Well, thank you for your work. Let me start off by saying, guys, I've been a lucky guy over the years in my life and my career to have been part of and participated in some real defining moments. And I have never publicly endorsed a presidential candidate or a vice presidential candidate in my life, over my career. So I figured let's kick this conversation off this way by me officially publicly endorsing you both to become president and vice president of our great country.
So look, a lot of conservative people did vote for Joe Biden, and Joe Biden is a conservative as well, right? And that's what they frame him as, a moderate. So get rid of, you know, extremist Trump, get in the moderate to manage the country, go back to the good old days of Obama or something, right? So it's not surprising, but it is surprising he came out so heavily for Joe Biden. And even after Joe Biden won, he took to Instagram and he posted a 7-minute video basically celebrating it.
Okay, so I have 3 congratulations that are in order right now. Of course, the first congratulations goes out to our new president-elect, Joe Biden. Congratulations on the presidency, and congratulations on being the most voted for presidential candidate in the history of our great country. The second congratulations, of course, goes to our brand new Vice President-elect Kamala Harris, the very first woman ever to become a vice president, and certainly the first woman of color to become a vice president as a man of color and as a man who loves and respects women. This is pretty special. The third congratulations goes to our country. It goes to our country, and we have had the biggest voter turnout in the history of the United States. And, you know, that is such a big deal because, you know, it tells me, number one, we were unified on that day. And just in terms of everybody coming together, everybody coming out to vote, mailing in your ballots, doing everything you possibly can, exercising the democratic right to vote, which was a beautiful thing.
But again, I'm a cynical person. It still feels very performative. It makes me feel like he thinks we're all clinging on his every word, and we really care what The Rock has to say about like the 2020 election. Like maybe some people do, but based on some of the stuff he said about politics, I personally, you know, don't care what he thinks about politics, considering how rich he is as well. So yeah, clearly a guy who is jumping on this bandwagon. And if we're trying to treat this more sincere, like let's try and get into the mindset of Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson in terms of his politics, and not just me speculating this is all political calculation. Joe Biden ran as like a unifier. Trump was causing so much division with all this terrible rhetoric, pitting everyone against each other, demonizing the media. The Rock, as a good old-fashioned centrist, could not abide by that. So it's very easy to endorse Joe Biden, right? And that's why he was excited about a Joe Biden presidency. We got two different thought processes going on right now. So although he hasn't come out and said a lot of stuff about COVID beyond, you know, him saying he's been vaccinated a lot, I think for a lot of fitness people, COVID was such a big deal because it shut down gyms. Even though they don't mind injecting a load of illegal stuff into themselves, apparently they were all terrified of the vaccine and what it would do to them. So a lot of them were anti-vaccine on those grounds. And also the ideology of I am built different, nothing will ever harm me, is very common with bodybuilder types. But in 2022, he was supporting Joe Rogan after he was getting loads of criticism for platforming so much like medical misinformation. And Rogan posted a video on his own Instagram rebutting charges that he spreads misinformation for his show, and The Rock commented underneath, "Great stuff here, brother, perfectly articulated. Look forward to coming on one day and breaking out the tequila with you," which he's actually done recently. You had other stuff like last year, he was supporting the rich men north of Richmond, like that terrible song about welfare queens, and all Republicans were just using it as some sort of like culture war thing, even though the guy himself like didn't really like a lot of the conservatives anyway. But The Rock wrote on his Instagram as well, saying, "Great to connect with you, brother. Way to handle the fame and influence with class and kindness. Keep kicking ass and see you down the road." So for some reason or another, The Rock has gone out of his way to like support more conservative things in those two instances. You can maybe view it from the thing of like, oh, he's just a centrist, he just says what he wants. For me, it's more like, oh, it's popular, so he's doing it. That's what I think. Like, what is the most popular thing to do these days? Oh, conservative media is popular, conservative figures are popular, Joe Rogan is popular, I'm going to come out in support of them because that's good for the Rock brand. And maybe he's hurting too because this also correlates with a lot of his films not doing that well recently as well, like things like Black Adam and stuff, which he'd been hyping up for years and years. So maybe he's hurt and he feels like as a brand he needs to make a comeback. But again, I can't really speculate what is driving this right-wing shift. But there is one more thing I want to talk about before we get more into like explicitly like going on Fox News and talking about wokeness and stuff. Apparently, you know, he's not a great guy to work with. And that comes mainly in terms of his films. Recently, only like a month and a bit ago, this big report came out from The Wrap, which talked about how like he actually isn't a great guy to work with because he just never shows up to work on time. How Dwayne Johnson's tardiness led to a $250 million runaway production. And this is talking about the film Red 1, which is different from that other film with the red in the title. So there was production issues ranging from Johnson's chronic lateness and lack of professionalism on set to producers' inexperience, which caused this movie to balloon in budget. The Rock, who advocates for himself as the hardest worker in the room, has developed a reputation in the industry for his lateness and lack of professionalism. Said one Red One insider, the only thing Dwayne was consistent at was being chronically late. The examples of Johnson's tardiness are numerous and well documented, from showing up late to fan events to leaving entire sets idle while he was off doing 3-hour workouts. On the set of Red One, his pattern of lateness proved more damaging. He was late an average of 7 to 8 hours per day and missed several entire days of production, ballooning costs by at least $50 million, according to 3 insiders. It was a disaster. On days when Johnson didn't show up, the production crew was forced to shoot around him. Dwayne truly doesn't give a fuck, one insider bluntly said. So his lateness on everything has been a problem for years. They rent a location they can shoot as much as they can of other actors while they wait for him to decide if he's coming on set, someone said, who produced HBO's Ballers. A former production assistant on this show corroborated this, saying he was regularly 3 to 4 hours late to set, keeping 100+ crew members waiting for no reason. On the set of 2018's Rampage, he was late an average of 4 to 5 hours daily, with one co-star keeping records. Dwayne's call times are never published on the call sheet. It's because one of the actors on Rampage was keeping a log of how late he was to set every day. The reasons behind his lateness seem to stem from his refusal to work a full shooting day, despite factoring in his 3-hour daily workout routine. It's his absolute refusal to work more than a 4 or 5 hour day. It's a control thing. His behaviour has led to confrontations with co-stars, most famously Vin Diesel. During production of Red Notice, Ryan Reynolds was so infuriated after waiting 5 hours for Johnson, they had a huge fight, with Johnson storming off set. Insiders also accused Johnson of breaking strict COVID quarantine rules on the set of Red Notice, whose cast and crew was sequestered by flying home in a private jet. He was frequently flying home and breaking the extremely strict rules of this bubble, according to an insider. Johnson himself posted about working a 14-hour day only to delete it after crew members called out his hypocrisy, with one writing, "He got to host family and friends for a barbecue and wound up getting COVID anyway. Most selfish thing I've seen an actor do." So yeah, like I was saying, his politics are probably just, whatever is best for The Rock. Like, I'll break COVID protocols if I want. I won't show up to set. I'll have no regard for my workers, just waiting around for me to show up so they can do their job, just absolutely wasting their time doing nothing. Maybe some people will be paid overtime. Hopefully a lot of his workforces that he fucked around were unionized. But yeah, it seems like a guy who doesn't really have the best interests of most people at heart and just does kind of what he wants. Would he really make a good president? I mean, we did have a really lazy president with Donald Trump, but sometimes you could be doing too much stuff as well, like 3-hour workouts every day, while shirking the rest of your responsibilities. But I just thought that was interesting to just kind of frame the rest of it. And the COVID thing is interesting because so many people were radicalized by having their freedoms stripped back a tiny bit for the good of the health of society. But you couldn't just act completely normal when there was a super deadly pandemic just ravaging America, right? Loads of people were well, you're shutting down my gyms, you're taking my liberty. And I feel like The Rock might have been influenced by this. Now, recently on Joe Rogan's podcast, he came out and said he's not friends with anyone who likes Joe Biden, despite giving a massive endorsement. And also, he then went on Fox News to say he regretted that as well. And in this segment, he also complains about wokeness and cancel culture.
To be real and to be direct and to be open and to be transparent. And as you and I have talked about, if you ask me a direct question, I'm always going to give you a direct answer, whatever it is. And that's important to me. And authenticity, we hear that word a lot, but that's important to me. And I feel we could go down the well here, but in today's easy cancel culture world, and cancel culture, woke culture, this culture, that culture, division, etc., that really bugs me. And in the spirit of that, you either succumb and be what you think other people want you to be, or you go, well, no, that's not who I am. I'm going to be myself, and I'm going to be real. If you ask me something, a real answer is important, and the truthful answer is important, and that may get people upset, it may piss people off, and that's okay. The endorsement that I made years ago with Biden was one I thought was the best decision for me at that time. And I thought back then, when we talk about, hey, I'm in this position where I have some influence, and it's my job then. I felt like that then. It's my job now to exercise my influence and share with this is who I'm going to endorse. Am I going to do that again this year? That answer is no.
So in terms of that interview there, like I said, if we're trying to keep in like the train of thought of The Rock being like some sort of centrist, he's talking about woke culture and cancel culture. Maybe you could say, oh, well, he's not actually talking about like he hates that. It's just like the culture of like division over like woke this, cancel culture that, which I would understand a bit more. Not that I'd agree with it anyway. If you weren't running to Fox News to complain about it. Because if you're running to Fox News to say that you regret endorsing Joe Biden, talking about like wokeness and cancel culture, it's pretty clear what you're saying, right? You're not saying, I just hate division in the country, let's just stop, we're all Americans, let's stop being at each other's throat. It's like, oh yeah, I don't like Joe Biden, I regret doing that. Woke culture and cancel culture, let me complain about that. And your audience all hate that, which I know because you're Fox News. So yeah, to me it feels like more calculated, like shifting to the right, and him always describing himself consistently as a centrist maybe helps this go down a bit easier with him or maybe other people. But yeah, it's pretty clear something happened to the gym bros during COVID where they've all started flocking now to the conservatives, even if they previously expressed some sympathy for more liberal positions, like Joe Rogan with like Bernie Sanders or something like that, or just some liberal sensibilities, even sometimes more left-wing sensibilities, and then The Rock here having said all that stuff before. But remember, this is the same guy who said all that garbage in 2017 about him being a good president while basically saying nothing. So The Rock, in my opinion, does what's best for his brand and for his income. And I think for a lot of people at the moment, they're seeing the right wing as a better kind of like safe space where you're not going to be like cancelled for anything. And also, can we take a small little moment to appreciate how so many people who talk about cancel culture like this have never been cancelled? Like, even if we understand cancelling to be like a mass backlash to something, even that report that came out recently about him being like terrible to work with, he wasn't like cancelled for that, was he? Like, there wasn't like such a massive backlash. Everyone was saying, oh, The Rock is just the worst thing ever, really. Especially because he disputed it with other people. It like muddies the waters a bit more. Like, I'm always going to believe like the workforce, aren't I? And not The Rock. He shows himself to be so self-absorbed. But at the same time, he wasn't cancelled. But it is a good way to insulate yourself in case more stuff comes out of the woke mob are trying to cancel me. You know, I'm the hardest working man and they just don't like that anymore or something. I don't know. Some garbage like that. But yeah, does he genuinely like care about wokeness and cancel culture? I don't know. I don't think so. Because all the stuff he said about Black Lives Matter in the past, they would all say that is woke garbage. So I just think he's just saying it personally, but who knows? Maybe he is more conservative. And obviously this all culminates, of course. He's now collaborating with Patrick Bet-David on some like business thing.
So last year we had Tom Brady at the Vault Conference. This year we have this guy. Check this out.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson here. Man, I am pumped. I got some big news to share with you guys. I cannot wait to join all of you guys down there at the Vault Conference in Palm Beach, September 4th through the 7th. I'm going to be sitting down with your host and my good buddy, Patrick Bet-David. We're going to chop it all up from leadership, entrepreneurial spirit, business strategy. We're going to chop up our journeys. We're going to chop up so much more, including all the various industries that we have been lucky and fortunate enough to build enterprise in. So I cannot wait. September 4th through the 7th. It's going to be a historic conference. I cannot wait. I will see you down there, Palm Beach. Back to work for me because the rent is always due.
I told you 2024 was going to be a special Vault Conference with the most electrifying man on earth. Are you kidding me? For 3.5 days, 10,000 people in the room, entrepreneurs, executives, private equity, VCs, salespeople from 60 plus countries, 180 different industries, chopping it up, strategizing.
And just seems like a networking event for like rich people or, I don't know, finance people, whatever. But yeah, it's interesting now. Patrick Bet-David is like very conservative. You can see that on his podcast from the stuff he says. Even the podcast like positively interviewing people like Andrew Tate, for example. Of course, it does get like more liberal left-wing guests on, but it's not like they ever agree with anything they're saying. And for me personally, The Rock just feels like someone who knows which way the wind's going. If Donald Trump becomes president again, is he going to say anything bad about him? I really doubt it. He's hardly ever said anything bad about Donald Trump. Donald Trump loves wrestling. Conservatives generally, I feel like wrestling more than more left-leaning people. The Rock has recently gone back to wrestling, and they've given him like the complete rights to his own image. So that's lots more money. So, to be honest, I don't think The Rock has any political principles, and I wouldn't call him a grifter at this moment because he doesn't need to take a political position to make money. He's super, super successful, super famous, loads of people like him. But I do think there is a right-wing pivot there that is primarily driven by business and perhaps ego as well, because he knows people on the right are going to be more supportive of that ego than people on the left like me, especially if more reports come out that he just absolutely takes the piss, like quite literally, if you know what I'm talking about, when he is working on movies. So that is it for like the politics of The Rock. I had fun researching this. I find these sorts of people like just really fascinating. It feels like only like an American could be The Rock, like no one else in the world. It just feels like alien to like, I don't know, more like classist, less aspirational UK culture. Like there is no one like The Rock, and there's no people believing they could be the next Rock, or you wouldn't become someone like The Rock if you're from the UK and think you should be like the fucking president or something. But this guy genuinely seems to think he should be president. So that is it for the video. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments. And if you made it this far, thank you for watching.